The locker room reeked of sweat and deception, and I was drowning in both. My name's Ethan, 18, an alpha posing as an omega to infiltrate Lincoln High, a prestigious school hiding secrets darker than my own. One wrong move, and I'd be exposed me mission. My future, gone. I adjusted the scent suppressor under my collar, its faint hum masking my alpha pheromones. The council had sent me here to uncover evidence of illegal omega suppression drugs being funneled through the school. Lincoln High was a model institution on the surface, gleaming hallways, ivy-covered walls, and a student body of betas and omegas, carefully curated to exclude alphas like me. The council suspected the school's director, Richard Harris, was involved in the drug trade, exploiting omegas for profit. My job was simple: blend in, gather proof, and get out. But nothing about this was simple. First period was chemistry, and I was already late. I slipped into the back row, keeping my head low. The teacher droned about molecular bonds, but my eyes snagged on him: Caleb Harris, the director's son. 19, a beta, with a smile that could unravel anyone's focus. His dark curls caught the fluorescent light, and when he glanced my way, I forgot how to breathe. Focus, Ethan. I was here to spy, not to flirt. But Caleb's easy laugh and the way he leaned back in his chair made my mission feel like a betrayal of something deeper. By lunch, I'd learned Caleb was the school's golden boy varsity soccer captain, debate team star, untouchable. Yet he didn't act like it. He sat with the misfits, sharing his fries, his presence a quiet rebellion against the rigid hierarchy of Lincoln High. I needed to get close to him. His father was my target, and Caleb was my best lead. But every time I tried to approach, my tongue tied itself in knots. I wasn't trained for this, for the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, or how his voice carried a warmth that made my chest ache. That afternoon, I lingered by the library, pretending to read a syllabus. Caleb was there, stacking books for a volunteer shift. "You're new, right?" he said, his voice smooth as honey. I nodded, muttering something about transferring from out of state. "I'm Caleb," he said, extending a hand. His grip was firm, his fingers lingering a second too long. My suppressor buzzed faintly, and I prayed he didn't notice. "You seem different," he added, his eyes searching mine. My heart pounded. Different was dangerous. Over the next week, I played my part: quiet omega, head down, grades average. But Caleb kept finding me. In the cafeteria, he'd slide into the seat across from me, asking about my favorite books. On the quad, he'd toss me a soccer ball, daring me to kick it back. Each interaction was a tightrope walk between duty and desire. I needed dirt on his father, but Caleb's orbit was pulling me in, and I was terrified of crashing. One evening, I hacked into the school's security system from a borrowed laptop, my hands shaking as I scanned for evidence. A file labeled Omega Protocols caught my eye, encrypted, but promising. I was so focused I didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. "Late night, Ethan." Caleb's voice cut through the dark. He leaned against the doorway, his silhouette backlit by the hall's fluorescent glow. "What are you working on?" he asked, his tone teasing but curious. I slammed the laptop shut, muttering about homework. His smile faltered, and I hated myself for the lie. By the end of the month, I had scraps of evidence-coded emails, vague references to shipments. But I also had Caleb. We'd started meeting after school, talking about everything but the truth. He told me about his mom's death, how his dad buried himself in work to cope. I wanted to tell him who I was, why I was here, but every word felt like a step toward ruin. The council didn't care about feelings. They wanted results. And I was running out of time. One night, Under the bleachers after a game. Caleb grabbed my hand. "Why do you keep pulling away?" he whispered, his breath warm against my cheek. My suppressor was failing, my alpha scent slipping through. His eyes widened, not with fear, but something else, something that made my heart race. Before I could stop myself, I kissed him. It was reckless, stupid, perfect. For a moment, I wasn't a spy. I was just Ethan, falling for a boy who saw through my lies. But then a shadow moved. Director Harris stepped into the light, his face a mask of fury. "Ethan," he said, his voice low and lethal. "We need to talk." Director Harris's office smelled of polished wood and authority, a stark contrast to the chaos in my chest. His eyes bore into me, sharp as the letter opener on his desk. I stood frozen, Caleb's kiss still burning on my lips, my suppressor humming faintly under my shirt. "You're no Omega," Harris said, his voice calm but cutting. "I've been watching you, Ethan. The way you move, the questions you ask. Who sent you?" My mouth went dry. I'd been trained for confrontation, but not with Caleb's father, not with Caleb's confused gaze lingering in my memory. I mumbled something about a misunderstanding, but Harris wasn't buying it. He leaned forward, his beta pheromones heavy with suspicion. "Don't lie to me, boy. I know an alpha when I see one." I wanted to bolt, but the door was behind him, and my mission hung by a thread. "I'm just a student," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. He smirked, cold and calculated. "Then explain why you're digging into my files." My stomach dropped. The laptop. The security system. He'd been tracking me longer than I'd realized. Before I could answer, the door creaked open. Caleb stood there, his varsity jacket slung over one shoulder, his expression a mix of hurt and defiance. "Dad, leave him alone," he said. Harris's jaw tightened. "This doesn't concern you, Caleb." But Caleb stepped forward, his eyes flicking to me. "It does if you're accusing my friend." Friend. The word stung, but it was a lifeline. I clung to it, nodding slightly to urge him on. Harris dismissed Caleb with a wave, but the tension lingered. "We're not done, Ethan," he said, pointing me to the door. I left, my heart hammering, knowing I'd dodged a bullet, but not the war. Caleb caught up to me in the hall. "What was that about?" he demanded. I wanted to tell him everything, the council, the drugs, my fake identity, but the words choked me. Instead, I muttered, "Your dad's intense." Caleb laughed, but it was hollow. "You have no idea." The next day, I doubled down on my mission. I couldn't let Caleb distract me, no matter how much I wanted to. I slipped into the admin wing during lunch, using a stolen key card to access Harris's office. The room was pristine, but a locked drawer in his desk screamed secrets. I jimmied it open, revealing a stack of papers, delivery schedules, chemical formulas, names of Omega students. My pulse raced. This was it, proof of the suppression drug ring. I snapped photos with my phone, my hands shaking as I imagined Harris walking in. That night, Caleb texted me to meet at the park. Against my better judgment, I went. He was sitting on a swing, the moonlight catching the curve of his jaw. "You're hiding something," he said, not looking at me. "I can feel it." I wanted to confess, to spill every lie, but the council's rules were ironclad. No one could know. Instead, I sat beside him, our shoulders brushing. "I'm just trying to figure things out," I said. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. He turned to me, his eyes soft but searching. "You can trust me, Ethan." Trust. The word felt like a blade. I leaned in, kissing him again, letting the world fall away. But guilt clawed at me. I was using him, wasn't I? His father was my target, and every moment with Caleb was a step closer to betraying him. When we pulled apart, he smiled, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "Don't break my heart," he whispered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Back at my dorm, I sent the photos to the council, my fingers trembling. Their response was immediate: "Good work. Get more. Stay close to the sun." My stomach twisted. They wanted me to exploit Caleb, to use his trust as a weapon. I stared at his last text, "See you tomorrow," and felt like a monster. The next week was a blur of sneaking and spying. I tailed Harris to a warehouse on the edge of town, watching from the shadows as crates were unloaded. Omegas were there, too, their faces blank, their movements sluggish. The drugs were real, and Harris was neck-deep in it. I recorded everything, my heart pounding as I hid behind a stack of boxes. But when I got back to school, Caleb was waiting. "Where were you?" he asked, his voice sharp. I lied about a family emergency, but his eyes narrowed. "You're slipping, Ethan." I was losing control of the mission, of myself, of whatever was growing between us. Caleb deserved better than my lies, but the truth would destroy him. And me. The warehouse evidence was gold, but it wasn't enough. The council demanded names, dates, hard proof to take Harris down. I was running on fumes, juggling my fake Omega persona, my feelings for Caleb, and the constant fear of being caught. Every time I saw Harris in the halls, his eyes lingered on me, like he was waiting for me to slip. Caleb was another problem. He wasn't just a lead anymore. He was a fire I couldn't put out. We'd meet in secret behind the gym, in empty classrooms, stealing moments that felt like defiance. Each kiss was a rebellion against my mission, each touch a reminder of what I stood to lose. But he was starting to ask questions I couldn't answer. "Why do you always look so scared?" he'd say, his fingers brushing my cheek. I'd laugh it off, but the weight of my lies was crushing me. One afternoon, I broke into the school's server room, a cramped space humming with machinery. I'd overheard Harris mention a secure drive to an aide, and I was betting it held the motherlode. The air was thick with dust as I plugged in a decryption device the council had given me. Files started downloading: financial records, emails, a list of Omega students flagged for treatment. My blood ran cold. These weren't just drugs. They were experimenting on kids, dulling their instincts, their identities. I copied everything, my heart racing as the progress bar ticked up. Then the door opened. I yanked the device out, shoving it into my pocket, but it was only Caleb. "Jesus, Ethan, what are you doing in here?" he hissed, glancing over his shoulder. I stammered about fixing a computer, but he wasn't buying it. "You're always somewhere you shouldn't be," he said, his voice low. "What's going on?" His eyes were pleading, and for a second, I almost told him. But the council's warning echoed in my head: trust no one. I brushed past him, muttering an apology, and fled. That night, I couldn't sleep. The server files confirmed Harris was working with a pharmaceutical syndicate, profiting off Omega suffering. But Caleb's face haunted May's trust, his warmth, the way he looked at me like I was more than a lie. I was falling for him, hard, and it was tearing me apart. The council didn't care about collateral damage. If I took Harris down, Caleb would be caught in the fallout. His family, his future ruined. The next day, Caleb cornered me in the library. "I saw you with my dad's files," he said, his voice shaking. "Are you spying on him?" My heart stopped. I tried to deny it, but he stepped closer, his eyes blazing. Don't lie to me, Ethan. I deserve the truth. I wanted to give it to him, to confess everything. But fear stopped me. Instead, I kissed him, desperate to hold on to the one thing that felt real. He pulled back, hurt flashing across his face. That's not an answer, he said, and walked away. I threw myself into the mission to drown out the guilt. I followed Harris to another meeting, this time at a diner downtown. Hidden in a booth, I recorded him talking to a man in a suit, their voices low but clear. The next batch is ready, Harris said. The Omegas won't know what hit them. My hands shook as I saved the audio. This was the smoking gun. But as I left, I saw Caleb across the street, watching me. He'd followed me. His expression was a knife to the chest betrayal, raw and real. Back at school, I avoided him, but he found me at the soccer field after practice. You're not who you say you are, he said, his voice breaking. I thought we had something, but you're playing me. I wanted to scream that he was wrong, that I loved him, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I stood there, silent, as he turned and left. My suppressor buzzed, a cruel reminder of the lie I was living. The council was thrilled with the evidence, but they wanted a direct link to Harris's suppliers. I was spiraling, torn between duty and the boy I couldn't stop thinking about. That night, I found Caleb's journal in the library, left behind after a study session. I shouldn't have read it, but I did. Pages of his thoughts, his fears, his feelings for me. I don't know who Ethan is, but I want to, he wrote. My heart broke. I was going to destroy him, and there was no way out. Caleb's journal burned a hole in my conscience. I hid it in my dorm, unable to return it without facing him. Every word he'd written about May's hope. His confusion was a reminder of what I was risking. But the council was breathing down my neck, demanding a final blow to Harris's operation. I had to choose my mission or my heart. I started tailing Harris more aggressively, tracking his movements through GPS data I'd hacked from his car. He was meeting suppliers at an abandoned factory outside town, a perfect spot for shady deals. I went alone, armed with a hidden camera and a knot of dread in my stomach. The factory was a maze of rusted pipes and shadows, the air thick with the smell of oil. I crouched behind a crate, watching Harris hand over a briefcase to a man with a scar across his cheek. The Omegas are compliant, Harris said. We're ready to scale up. My camera caught every word, every gesture. This was the evidence the council needed to end it. But as I slipped out, a hand grabbed my arm. I spun, heart pounding, expecting Harris. It was Caleb. What the hell, Ethan? He whispered, his eyes wide with fear. Are you trying to get yourself killed? I yanked my arm free, hissing for him to leave. He didn't. I followed you, he said. I know you're after my dad. Tell me why. His voice cracked, and I saw the boy who'd trusted me, who'd kissed me under the bleachers. I wanted to tell him everything, but the truth would shatter him. Go home, Caleb, I said, my voice cold. He flinched like I'd hit him. Back at school, I sent the factory footage to the council. Their response was curt: prepare for extraction. Operation concludes in 48 hours. My chest tightened. Extraction meant disappearing, leaving Caleb behind without a word. I couldn't do it, not yet. I needed to see him one last time, to explain, even if it cost me everything. I found him at the park, sitting on the same swing where we'd kissed. His face was a storm of anger and hurt. You're leaving, aren't you? He said before I could speak. I heard my dad talking about a breach. It's you, isn't it? I froze, my lies crumbling. Caleb. He cut me off. Don't. Just tell me who you are. My suppressor buzzed. My alpha scent slipping through. His eyes widened, but he didn't back away. You're an alpha, he whispered. This whole time, I told him the truth, most of it. The council, the drugs, my mission to take down his father. I left out the part about using him as a lead. His face crumpled as I spoke, but he didn't interrupt. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. You played me, he said finally, his voice barely audible. I thought you cared. I grabbed his hand, desperate. I do care. More than you know. He pulled away, tears in his eyes. Then why does it feel like you're choosing them over me? I had no answer. The council's deadline loomed, and Harris was closing in. That night, I found a note slipped under my door. Meet me at the factory. Midnight. Caleb. My gut screamed trap, but I couldn't ignore him. I went. My camera and suppressor my only allies. The factory was darker than before. The silence oppressive. Caleb was there, alone, his face pale under the moonlight. I found something, he said, holding out a flash drive. It was in my dad's office. I think it's what you're looking for. I stared at him, torn between gratitude and guilt. Why are you helping me? I asked. He looked away, his jaw tight. Because I want to believe you're not the bad guy. I took the drive, our fingers brushing. For a moment, I thought he'd pull me close, but he stepped back. Don't make me regret this, he said, and left me in the dark. The drive was a Goldman emails, bank records, proof of Harris's entire network. But as I uploaded it to the council, I couldn't shake the image of Caleb's face, the trust I'd broken. I was so close to finishing the mission, but at what cost? The council had everything they needed: Harris's network, his suppliers, his crimes. My job was done. But as I packed my bag for extraction, Caleb's flash drive felt like a weight in my pocket. He'd risked everything to help me, and I was about to vanish from his life without a word. The thought made me sick. I tried to find him at school, but he was avoiding me. His friends said he'd skipped classes, and his phone went straight to voicemail. Panic clawed at me. Had Harris found out about the flash drive? I couldn't leave without knowing Caleb was safe. Against protocol, I slipped into Harris's office again, searching for any sign of trouble. A memo on his desk caught my eye: orders to relocate certain Omega students, effective immediately. My blood ran cold. They were covering their tracks, and Caleb might be caught in the crossfire. I tracked him to the soccer field, where he was kicking a ball alone, his movements angry and precise. Caleb, I called, jogging toward him. He froze, his eyes hard. What do you want, Ethan? I told him about the memo, the relocation, the danger. You need to get out of here, I said. Your dad's operation is collapsing, and he'll take anyone down with him. Caleb laughed bitterly. You think I don't know what my dad is? I've seen the files, the drugs. I just didn't want to believe it. He stepped closer, his voice breaking. But you made me think I could trust you. And now you're leaving, aren't you? I wanted to deny it, but the truth was written on my face. I have to, I said. The council, he cut me off. Screw the council. What about us? His words hit like a punch. I grabbed his shoulders, desperate to make him understand. I love you, Caleb. That's why I'm telling you to run. His eyes softened, but before he could speak, headlights swept across the field. Harris's car. We ducked behind the bleachers, my heart pounding. Harris wasn't alone. 2 men in suits flanked him, their faces grim. Find the boy, Harris barked. He's been snooping. They were after me. Or Caleb. Or both. I grabbed Caleb's hand, pulling him toward the woods behind the school. We ran, branches snapping underfoot, until we reached a clearing. What now? Caleb whispered, his breath ragged. I didn't know. For the first time, I was out of plans. We hid in an old shed, the air thick with dust and fear. Caleb sat close, his knee brushing mine. If we get out of this, he said, promise me you'll stop lying. I nodded, my throat tight. I promise. But even as I said it, I knew the council wouldn't let me go so easily. They owned me, and this mission was just the beginning. By dawn, we slipped back to campus, sticking to the shadows. I sent a coded message to the council, begging for backup. Their response was cold, extraction in 12 hours. Neutralize threats if necessary. Neutralize. The word made my stomach churn. I couldn't hurt Caleb's father, not in front of him. But Harris was closing in, and I was running out of time. That afternoon, I found a burner phone in my locker with a single text, factory. Tonight. Come alone. It wasn't signed, but I knew it was Harris. Caleb insisted on coming, but I refused. This is my fight, I said. He grabbed my arm, his eyes fierce. It's ours now. I wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes stopped me. We were in this together, whether I liked it or not. At the factory, Harris was waiting, his face a mask of calm. You've been busy, Ethan, he said, holding up a photo of me at the warehouse. My suppressor buzzed, my alpha scent leaking. Caleb stepped forward, his voice steady. Dad, stop this. I know what you're doing. Harris's eyes darkened. You don't understand. Caleb, this is bigger than you. He signaled, and the men in suits stepped out of the shadows, closing in. The factory's air was thick with tension, the hum of my suppressor drowned out by the pounding in my chest. Harris's men circled us, their eyes cold and calculating. Caleb stood beside me, his hand brushing mine, a silent promise we'd face this together. But Harris's gaze was fixed on me, his voice low and venomous. You think you can take me down, Alpha? You're just a pawn. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to lunge. I have proof, I said. Your deals, your drug sits over. Harris laughed, a sound that chilled me. You have nothing. The council won't touch me. They're in too deep. My stomach dropped. Was he bluffing? Or was the council compromised? Before I could process it, Caleb stepped forward. Dad, how could you? His voice cracked, raw with betrayal. Harris's face softened for a split second, then hardened again. Stay out of this, Caleb. One of the men lunged at me, but I dodged, my alpha instincts kicking in. I tackled him, pinning him to the ground, my suppressor whining as my pheromones surged. Caleb shouted, grappling with another thug. He was scrappy, but untrained, and I saw the fear in his eyes. Ethan, he yelled as the second man grabbed him. I roared, shoving my attacker aside and charging. But Harris pulled a gun, aiming it at my chest. Enough, he barked. Time slowed. Caleb's eyes met mine, wide with panic. I raised my hands, my mind racing for a way out. Let him go, I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at me. Harris smirked. You care about my son, don't you? That's your weakness. He gestured to his men, who dragged Caleb toward a van. I lunged, but the gun stopped me cold. One move, and he's done, Harris said. I was trapped. The council's backup was hours away, and my evidence was useless if Caleb got hurt. What do you want? I asked, stalling. Harris's eyes gleamed. Your silence. Leave Lincoln High. Disappear. I glanced at Caleb, his face bruised but defiant. I couldn't abandon him, but I couldn't fight a gun, either. Okay, I lied, my mind scrambling. Harris lowered the gun slightly, but his men kept Caleb pinned. Then a siren wailed in the distance. Harris froze, his eyes darting to the shadows. The council. The police. I didn't care. I used the distraction, tackling Harris to the ground. The gun skidded across the floor, and I pinned his arms, my alpha strength overwhelming his beta frame. Caleb broke free, kicking one of the men in the knee and bolting to my side. Go? I shouted, but he didn't. He grabbed the gun, hands shaking, and pointed it at his father. Stop this, Dad, Caleb said, tears streaming down his face. Harris stared at him, his expression unreadable. You'd choose him over me, he whispered. Caleb's hands trembled, but his voice was firm. I'm choosing what's right. The sirens grew louder, and Harris's men scattered. I held Harris down as headlights flooded the factory. Council agents poured in, weapons drawn, shouting orders. Harris was cuffed, his empire crumbling in real time. But Caleb's eyes were on me, not his father. You were going to leave, he said, the gun still in his hands. I stepped closer, ignoring the agents swarming around us. I didn't want to, I said. I love you. His face crumpled, and he dropped the gun, collapsing into my arms. For a moment, the chaos faded, and it was just us, holding on like the world wasn't falling apart. The council took Harris away, the evidence I'd gathered sealing his fate. But as they debriefed me, their leader pulled me aside. You got too close, she said. The boy's a liability. My heart sank. They wanted me to cut ties, to disappear for good. I looked at Caleb, sitting alone in the back of an ambulance, his face pale but strong. I'd lied to him, used him, but he'd still fought for me. I couldn't walk away. That night, I broke protocol. I found Caleb at the park, his eyes red from crying. It's over, I said, sitting beside him. Your dad's gone. The drugs are done. He nodded, staring at the ground. And you? He asked. I took his hand, my suppressor off for the first time, my alpha scent raw and honest. I'm staying, I said. If you'll have me. Caleb's hand was warm in mine, but his silence was heavy. The park was quiet, the swings creaking in the breeze. I'd just thrown away my future with the council for him, but his eyes held a question I wasn't sure I could answer. Can I trust you? I wanted to promise him the world, but I'd already broken too many promises. I need time, he said finally, his voice soft but firm. You lied to me, Ethan. About everything. My chest ached, but I nodded. I know. I'll wait. He looked at me, his gaze softening, and for a moment, I thought he'd lean in. But he stood, brushing dirt off his jeans. I'll find you when I'm ready, he said, and walked away. I watched him go, my heart caught between hope and dread. The council wasn't happy. They called me to a safe house the next day, a sterile room that smelled of coffee and bureaucracy. You've compromised the mission, their leader, Agent Carter, said, her eyes like steel. Your attachment to the Harris boy could expose us. I argued that Caleb wouldn't talk, that he'd helped us take down his father. But Carter wasn't swayed. You're off active duty, she said. Lay low, or we'll make you. The threat was clear. I was expendable. I moved to a cheap motel on the edge of town, My suppressor gone. My alpha sent drawing wary glances from strangers. The news was buzzing with Harris's arrest, corruption, drugs, exploitation. Lincoln High was under investigation, and Omega students were being relocated to safer schools. I should have felt proud, but all I could think about was Caleb. I texted him, called him, left voicemails. Silence. Days turned into weeks. I got a job at a diner, flipping burgers to pay the bills. My old life as a spy feeling like a dream. But every night, I checked my phone, hoping for a message from him. I kept his journal, reading it when the loneliness got too heavy. I want to hate him, but I can't. He'd written. I clung to that, praying it meant something. One evening, I was wiping down tables when the bell above the door jingled. Caleb stood there, his varsity jacket replaced by a plain hoodie, his eyes tired but clear. "You're hard to find," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. My heart leapt. "You found me," I said, dropping the rag. We sat in a booth, the diner empty except for us. He told me about his dad's trial, the media circus, the shame. "I didn't want to see you," he admitted. "But I kept thinking about what you said. About loving me." I reached for his hand, and this time, he didn't pull away. "I meant it," I said. "Every word." He nodded, his thumb brushing mine. "I'm still mad," he said. "But I miss you." We talked until the diner closed, the words spilling out his fears, my regrets, the fragile hope of starting over. When he kissed me, it wasn't desperate or reckless like before. It was slow, real, a promise we'd figure this out. But the council wasn't done with me. The next day, Carter showed up at the diner, her face grim. "We found a leak," she said. "Someone's talking about the mission. If it's your boy, he's in trouble." My blood ran cold. Caleb wouldn't betray me, but Harris's network was still out there, and they'd want revenge. I had to protect him, even if it meant facing the council head-on. I found Caleb at his new apartment, a small place he was sharing with a cousin. "We need to talk," I said, showing him Carter's warning. His face paled. "I didn't tell anyone," he swore. But he admitted he'd kept copies of the flash drive, just in case. "I was scared," he said. "I didn't know who to trust. I wanted to be angry, but I understood." I taught him to doubt. We agreed to destroy the copies, but as we burned the drive in a metal bin behind his building, headlights flashed. A black SUV screeched to a stop, and men in masks jumped out. "Run!" I shouted, shoving Caleb toward the alley. We sprinted, my alpha instincts screaming, but they were faster. A fist caught my jaw, and I hit the ground, Caleb's voice fading as everything went black. I woke to the smell of damp concrete and the throb of pain in my skull. My hands were zip-tied behind me, the room dim and windowless. Caleb was across from me, his lip bloodied, his eyes wide with fear but burning with defiance. "Ethan," he whispered. "You okay?" I nodded, though my head screamed otherwise. We were in a basement, probably one of Harris's old hideouts. His network hadn't collapsed, it had just gone underground. Footsteps echoed, and Scarface, the man from the factory, stepped into the light. "You've been a problem," he said, his voice like gravel. "The alpha spy and the traitor's son." He crouched in front of me, his scar twisting as he smirked. "Harris warned us about you." My stomach churned. The council had underestimated the syndicate's reach, and now Caleb was paying for my mistakes. They wanted the evidence, the files, the footage, everything I'd sent to the council. "It's gone," I lied, my voice hoarse. Scarface laughed, pulling a knife from his belt. "Then you're useless." He turned to Caleb, and my heart stopped. Maybe your boyfriend will talk to save you. Caleb's eyes met mine, steady despite the fear. Don't tell them anything, he said. I wanted to scream, to break the ties and tear Scarface apart. But I was helpless. Then a crash upstairs. Shouts. Gunfire. Chaos. The council had found us. Scarface cursed, barking orders to his men as agents stormed the basement. I threw myself at Caleb, shielding him as bullets flew. An agent cut our ties, and we ran, ducking through the chaos to a waiting van. Carter was there, her face grim but relieved. You're lucky, she said. We traced the leak to one of Harris's men, not your boy. I glanced at Caleb, his hand tight in mine. He'd been innocent, and I doubted him. The syndicate was dismantled, its leaders arrested, the Omega students freed from the drug program. The council offered me a new mission, but I turned them down. I was done being their pawn. Caleb and I moved to a small town, far from Lincoln High and its secrets. We rented a cramped apartment, got jobs at a local bookstore, and started rebuilding. It wasn't easy. Trust came slowly, scarred by my lies and his father's betrayal. But every night, when he fell asleep beside me, his head on my chest, I felt something stronger than duty, home. One evening, as we sat on our tiny balcony, Caleb handed me a new journal. Write our story, he said, his smile soft but sure. The real one. I took the pen, my hand shaking not from fear, but from hope. We weren't perfect, but we were honest. And that was enough. The world still had its shadows, prejudice, secrets, power plays. But we faced them together, an alpha and a beta, defying the roles we'd been given. Our love wasn't a weakness, as Harris had claimed. It was our strength, our rebellion, our truth. And as I wrote the first words in that journal, we survived, I knew we'd keep fighting. Not just for us, but for everyone who deserved to love without fear.